Raza hadn't been back at his villa for more than a few moments before deciding he would flee. Night after torturous night, he suffered the inquest. Every specious piece of evidence drove the dagger deeper into his fate. By the 12th night, President Wellington's commissioned court issued a unanimous verdict. Guilty. "My fair people of the kingdom," the president announced, seated above the gallery of jurors and onlookers, "let us send this traitor on his way. The prisoner's violation of Order 19 is punishable by, and he is hereby sentenced to 10 years hard labor at Governor's Island. This period will begin in exactly 1 fortnight. Until then, given the unfortunate crowding of the penitentiary, he will remain under close watch at his villa. We are adjourned." With a crack of the mallet, the crowd dispersed. Raza exited stone-faced beside his counsel, with President Wellington casting a sidelong glance after him. At long last, the president defeated his nagging political rival. The ride back to the villa, though only 20 minutes, was more than enough to cement Raza's determination. Opening the French doors to his private quarters, he tossed his beige waistcoat on the sofa and marched straight to the balcony, which commanded a splendid view of Whitlock Channel. On the opposite side, a rocky beach lay at the bottom of rolling hills, dotted with conifers and mighty beech trees. Darkness was closing in all around, but he couldn't sleep. A few handwritten letters and handshakes clasped with gold coins were sufficient to summon Captain Leopold and First Officer Karok to the villa the following night. The 3 men huddled at the window by the balcony. "Is this really what you want?" asked the captain, cupping one hand in front of the cigar in his mouth and lighting it with the other. "I reckoned it wouldn't be much trouble, or that anyone would ever suspect you on account of your ties to the party," Raza said, wringing his hands. "Indeed, it wouldn't be suspected, my friend, but it still might be trouble," the captain retorted. Raza's eyes glistened in the dim light of the chandelier. "What on earth do you mean?" "It's all nonsense. A fairy tale, really," said Karok, crossing his arms. "Believe what you will, Karok," said the captain. Then, turning to Raza, the captain's eyes suddenly lit up with fiery intensity. "I plan to tell you precisely how we will manage your escape and the dangers involved, but you will not make mockery of what I am about to relate to you. Indeed, you are at no liberty to do so." Raza assented. The captain continued. "Mr. Lexington in the Ministry of Security has agreed to help secure your escape. Here's how it is. The guards downstairs change at exactly 30 minutes to midnight. That is therefore the best and only time. Seeing as we are on the northeast tip of the peninsula, the most reasonable course would be down Whitlock Channel. At the end of this course lies Principe territory, which you are aware has no extradition treaty with the kingdom. Crossing land and sailing off the western coast is impossible. It's too heavily fortified against the pirates, and we would easily be captured and sent straight to the gallows. Yes, Whitlock Channel it must be. How long has it been since I sailed it?" Here the captain paused. "Must have been over 10 years, sir," said Karok. "More than that," the captain said. "Now, my man, I will tell you the danger we face, a danger more dreadful than any thugs President Wellington could throw at us. I trust you're familiar with the wreck of the Emerald, which sank in Whitlock Channel at lightning speed after an explosion below deck ripped her apart. And you surely remember the Trident. She went down in Whitlock Channel under a raging storm not even the gods could produce. Captain Leopold stroked his chin and leaned forward. There were many other tragedies, and I lost a great many friends in all of them. Survivors? No survivors. But there were witnesses on shore. He paused again, and a slight shudder ran through him. These witnesses say they spotted someone, perhaps a man, sitting in a rowboat with something wrapped in his arms. This boat appeared close to the vessels as they sank. The rowboat seemed to be lit up somehow, and the onlookers say they heard the wind carry a baby's cry. The older townspeople believe it's the spirit of a fisherman who drowned with his child on the channel many years earlier. Nonsense, Karok interjected. I suppose you're going to tell him what they call it, too. The townspeople call that rowboat the Sentinel because it don't let nobody down the channel. Are you saying, Captain, that the channel is cursed? Raza asked, tilting his head sideways. I know not whether the channel is cursed. I only know that an evil inhabits it, and if we are to embark on this voyage under the cover of dark, we must not fall prey to it. Raza rose up from his armchair and began pacing the room. And how do you intend to prevent that from happening, pray tell? We will light a blue lamp, according to old lore. That shall keep the wretched thing away, as ghosts and demons hate the color of serenity. We embark tomorrow evening. Good night. The following morning, Raza roamed around his villa until breakfast. It was a chilly day, but the sunlight spilled through the high windows. When the servant finally came in, Raza hurriedly dismissed him, wanting nothing more than to think alone. Could it be true? Of course, he'd heard the stories over the years, and the papers made hay out of the sunken vessels. Not one ship dared journey down Whitlock Channel after sunset, preferring to sail off the western shore, then succumb to similar fates as the Emerald, the Trident, and countless others. Each incident was more horrifying than the last. When the Emerald exploded, witnesses claimed she went down stern first, where the cabins for the women were. By the time anyone could grasp the situation, half the passengers were drowned. The Trident similarly had no time to react to the sudden storm that swept down from the northwest. Her crew struggled against the beating waves and battering winds, but in a matter of moments the tempest threw her on her side. Rescue operations in those conditions would have been sheer suicide. Some around the peninsula argue that these incidents represented nothing more than bad luck, and maybe even poor planning. After all, the sea around the kingdom was dangerous on all sides for one reason or another. But for a seasoned man of Captain Leopold's rank, to talk of evil ghosts perplexed Raza at precisely the moment he demanded reassurance. Was this the best man to lead the escape? Raza reconsidered his choice of co-conspirators, and pangs of regret stampeded across his mind. If his troop were to fall to pieces over folklore, he was finished. But it was futile to change his plans at this late hour. He would go. The captain's men asked for double the compensation Raza originally offered, what they called a risk premium. He was happy to grant their request. Even though the captain and his men sympathized with Raza's political leanings, they could not be fully trusted. Raza would have to remain on his guard. The night ushered in a fresh rush of cold air from the highlands. The sky was clear, but there was no moon. As the grandfather clock on the wall struck 11 p.m., Raza's fidgeting intensified. Pacing his room, he now and then glanced out the balcony window at Whitlock Channel. The water was as still as a sheet of glass. At precisely 11:30, he heard a carriage approach from around the corner of the villa. Then a soft knock at his bedroom door. Without a word, Raza opened the latch to find First Officer Karok and another man of about 20 years in the hall dressed in plain clothes. "This here's Jessup," Karok grunted, grabbing the young man's shoulder. "He's here to help put you in the box." A rectangular cargo box with wheels stood in the corridor. The brown oak was coarsely hewed and stitched together with a series of nails soldered off on the inside. Before long, Raza was sealed in. Through the thick wood, he heard the muffled, heavy footsteps of Karok and Jessup as they made their way out the back garden. The smell of the fresh night air penetrated the box, and Raza's chest thumped harder. Karok tucked him away in a quiet corner on E-deck. "We'll be back for you in a couple hours," the muffled voice said. "Hold tight." Captain Leopold was lighting the blue lamp as Karok stepped onto the bridge. Jessup was close behind, staring with wide eyes at the bright cobalt flame, which illuminated the entire bridge in an eerie, somber glow. The ship pulled away from shore at an agonizingly slow rate, and the night was as still as could be. The men on deck were all silent too. Now and then, Captain Leopold peered through his binoculars back at land, half expecting an armada to pursue them at any moment. But as the ship faded beyond town and glided down Whitlock Channel, the rigid atmosphere seemed to break some, and the captain felt more at ease. The ship was not going fast enough to raise suspicions from ashore, and not slow enough either. Nearly 30 minutes in, apparently satisfied with their progress, he walked to the entrance of the bridge. "Shall we have a quick meal with the men, Karok?" the captain said. "It won't be longer than 4 or 5 hours till we reach our destination." "Aye, sir, I would be honored to join you," Karok growled. "Jessup, you are to remain at your post here until we return. Under no circumstances are you to extinguish this blue lamp. First Officer Karok has already instructed you on the importance of this matter. Do you understand?" "Aye, sir," Jessup's voice echoed in the hollow walls of the cabin. Descending the stairs to B-deck, Karok shivered from the cold. "When are we going to let the man out, sir?" "Not until we reach Principe's territory," the captain said sharply. "He will not go parading himself around deck for the men to see. The fewer of us who know what's in that box, the better." Raza lay in the wooden box, in a storage room. It was an hour into the voyage, and he could hear the usual rumblings of a ship at sail outside. Suddenly, a violent jolt broke the calm. Far below, the sound of screeching steel bellowed. In the darkness of the wooden box, Raza heard hurried footsteps and the calls of men on the upper decks. The engines stopped. Then an interlude of silence fell across the ship, and never before had Raza listened so intently. It was as if the whole world had fallen asleep. For several excruciating minutes, or was it mere seconds, the silence continued. Gradually, a faint, steady murmuring came close at hand. The divots above and below him groaned. And could this be his imagination? No, the ship was unmistakably listing to one side. Out of his pocket, Raza drew a small revolver and tapped on the roof of the box. "What's happening out there?" he shouted. When only the creaking of the divots replied, he fired 3 rounds. As his fears grew, he threw himself into a panic, emptying the chamber. He managed to break open a hole large enough to crawl through. Upon jutting his head out, Raza saw that the entire storage room, though dark, was tilting further starboard all the time. And much worse, water was rushing in. Raza leapt out. Not a solitary soul was in sight as he bolted up the ladder to the bridge. Within seconds, the water swallowed up the storage room below him. When Raza threw open the door to the bridge, the grim expression on Captain Leopold's face greeted him. Jessup lay on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. An expression of sheer terror was set in the captain's eyes. At the window, Karok was leaning over an extinguished lamp. "Then it's true. It's all true," Karok said. Soon the bridge, too, was no more. As Raza's head slipped beneath the waves one last time, he thought he heard the cries of a child ringing in his ears. And not far off, a small boat rested on the water. A figure of a man was in it, holding a cloth bundle in his arms.